Today we relate to us his inspiring journey and address the title, I believe in Abraham, Moses, Jesus, Muhammad, who am I? And we are very honored to have him here today, and I would like to request him to kindly come to the front and present his talk. I begin by saying, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, my brothers and sisters, and welcome to all of our guests. I have to begin by saying, Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alameen. All praise belongs to the one true creator of all that exists, the Lord of all the world. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in wa man wala yawmuddin. And I ask for the prayers and blessings of the one true creator of all that exists to be upon the most noble messenger Muhammad, his family, and his companions all together, and those who follow them up until the day of judgment. وَأَشْهَدُ أَنْ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ, and I bear witness that nothing has the right to be given worship except the one true creator of everything that exists. وَحْدَهُ لَا شَرِيكَ لَهُ, who is one alone without a partner. وَأَشْهَدُ أَنَّ مُحَمَّدًا عَبْدُهُ وَرَسُولُهُ, and I bear witness that indeed Muhammad is the slave and messenger of God. Now, to get into the entirety of my life story is beyond the framework of the time that we are allotted. I mean, that would be hard for anybody for me to say, to come here and tell me this life story in an hour. And for me to give you even the massive amount of information that led to a real change in thought or ideology or theology for myself over a few-year period would, again, take up too much of the allotted time. And I have been trying to produce videos about this, so you keep on any of my videos, and they're numbering over 15 to 20 right now. So what I'm going to do, God willing, is give you the major points, or the highlight reel, what they call it, of the story, and the major points that led me from where I was to where I am now. And as a disclaimer, if there seems to be any holes that I have left out, then please feel free to ask me in the Q&A session, knowing very well that I couldn't fit in all the holes if you gave me 3 hours. That's how long it would take. I have skipped people 3 hours before. But I was called a hot day taker. That's not something any Muslim wants to be labeled with. So we're going to leave that one alone for today. As the brother said, I was born and raised in Greenville, South Carolina, and I'm not going to tell you too much of my beginning because that takes up too much time frame. But at the age of 14, I started to become very involved in the religion I was raised in as a United Methodist. And I was more involved in the youth services at our church, and I became a very good friend with our youth pastor. And our youth pastor was a sophomore in high school, and when I graduated middle school and began to go to high school, he was a senior and I was a freshman. And I began to get a ride to school from him because he lived across the street from me. We became very good friends, and he began to take me to something called Young Life, which is and if my voice sounds very odd, it's because I'm suffering from a sinus infection, so I know my accent's already got me on the bad side, but we'll make it sound better. He started to take me to Young Life Fellowship, which was, Young Life was a youth-run organization, a Christian non-denomination, youth-run organization all throughout the United States, and it was very big where I'm from the South. And I'm dead at the beginning of what they call the Bible Belt. And I began to become more or less seriously involved in my religion at this time when I started to attend Young Life and become very good friends with Benjamin, who was our youth pastor at our church. He was also a pastor in Young Life. And it was at this point in my life that I considered myself saved by grace rather than by chance, meaning I was born and raised like this. I accepted it as something of my own. Now, when Benjamin graduated high school, he started to attend a small Bible college in my hometown. And even though it's small, it is world-renowned amongst Christian academia, amongst biblical scholarship and academic study. It is called Bob Jones University. And Bob Jones University does have some world-renown. Now, beyond his normal seminary and theological studies, he wanted to focus on a field called textual criticism, or historical critical analysis of biblical documents. And to give you a summary of that subject would take the entirety of the time and a half. But a textual critic is someone who studies the Bible from its original sources, meaning the documents that have been found existing throughout the entirety of the world, which now are the basis for the makeup of what we now call the Bible. And those documents are varied in number. They go up almost to 7,000 variant documents, which the tally is held in Germany, excuse me. And those documents are written in a variety of languages, which the textual critic has to become very familiar with, such as ancient Hebrew, Semitic Hebrew, such as ancient Greek, such as Latin, such as Syrian, such as Aramaic, so on and so forth. Some of the hardest languages in the world. And then they have the capacity to study these various documents through many different sciences. You have the science of the language of detection, the science of the dating of the text, carbon dating. Then you have the science of witnesses, weighing the witness against one another, and so on and so forth. Because the documents are invariant in some places. They do say different things, even though it might be the same document. It might say a couple of different things. It might say something different here than it says in this document, found in this part of the world. And this other part, when it was found in another part of the world, might say something different. So what the textual critic has to do is to find out what may have been the most original thought of the author who penned down the document, because there are no originals. So that makes it very difficult to get back to original, and no textual critic will say that they have verified an original, because to do that you need an original. There's no way to know, so they get as close as they can. But anyway, this is what he wanted to do. And if you want to study textual criticism, you go, to Scholar Google and find out more yourself, or Wikipedia. That's where we get most of our information on it anyway. Now, as he was beginning to do that, I was his apprentice, because I really wanted to emulate him. I really wanted to be like him. I really wanted to be a youth minister. I really wanted to become a minister ordained in the church. I wanted to pastor in Young Life. It was just something that became a desire was inside of me to do what I saw Benjamin and these young men and women in Young Life do. And I also enrolled in Bob Jones University in my sophomore year with the intention to go forward to Bob Jones and study textual criticism and graduate and go on to preach the gospel of Christ. But the idea that myself and the youth pastor had was that if we were going to preach the Bible, we were going to do it with authority. And we can think of no greater authority than knowing it like this scientifically, knowing it spiritually, knowing it from its original sources, knowing it from its language point of view, so on and so forth. Because we both had this thing about us, which if you ask my family, and you ask my wife, she calls it an OCD, that I have an over-compulsive disorder of perfection, that I'm a perfectionist by heart. I like to do things to the best of my capacity. If I'm going to do something, I want to do it to the best. And if I don't do it to the best, I'm going to get very frustrated. That's why it's very hard for me to do this talk in an hour time. I usually like to give it all, but we'll make it happen. God willing. And if there's somebody else doing what I'm doing, I'm going to try to beat you. And I'm not going to have any apologies at all. That's how I am. So we really wanted to do it like this. And in the summer of '96, Benjamin came and presented a question to me. So I was studying with him as he was studying, because I wanted to be 3 years advanced in my studies before I entered Bob Jones. I made him teach me everything that he was learning. In the summer of '96, all of that changed. Benjamin came and asked me a question that changed my life. He asked me, and by the way, I had began filling in for him as a youth pastor at church, because he was very busy. He had school, he had work, so he was not able to make some. So I was filling in for him, and our pastor very much was happy with that, because he knew me and my family was going. I began to pastor in Young Life. I guess they say that he said I was, blessed with the gift of speaking and preaching. So this was something my pastor was very happy with. But in '96, Benjamin came and asked me, Joshua, which my name is Joshua by birth, Yusha is the exact same name, the Arabic equivalent. It's actually closer to the original form of my name anyway. But he came and said, Joshua, have you ever read the Bible? And I asked him, what kind of silly question is that? Do you not remember that you have relinquished your job duties over to me? Shouldn't you entrust me enough that I at least have a little bit of wrangling on the book? I mean, I've read the New Testament back and forth. I was reading from the Schofield Reference Bible. That was my Bible of choice at that time, referencing back and forth to the King James Version, of course, back and forth to the New Testament and Old Testament, so on and so forth. So I figured, I have a handle on this thing. He said, no. Have you ever really read it? I was like, okay, what do you mean? He said, have you read it like you would read a novel? Meaning you've read it from the beginning to the end. If you've read a novel, then you can tell me that you read it from beginning to end, cover to cover, You can tell me what it's about, you can tell me the cast members, you can tell me the plot, you can tell me the scenario, you can tell me if there are any subplots going on. You know, all of these different things you can do with a book that you generally read. You can summarize it, give a synopsis on it, write a term paper on it, whatever have you. You know. He said, have you ever read a book like that? I said, no, of course not.